Well, good morning. It's an honor to be with you all this morning on this historic day in Northern Ireland. And this is a historic day. This is a day when you celebrate all the collaboration you are already doing, and you begin to dream of a greater collaboration that you can do together in the future. We have for too long believed that the pathway from hurt to hope is simply services or programs. The pathway to hope is not a service or a program. The pathway to hope is a community, a culture, a place where survivors, both adults and children, are welcomed, not into a service or a program, but into a healthy community of respect and mutuality. That today is the focus of our conference: how to offer adult and child survivors a culture of hope, a community of hope where they can belong long after the crisis, long after they have received services or programs. So it's a great honor for me to begin that. My time will be short this morning because of our schedule, so I will make some brief remarks and then I will turn it over to Gail Strack, our CEO. I want to first of all say thank you to Mari Brown. We are in this room because of her leadership and the work of the staff of Women's Aid. And yesterday we had the opportunity to tour Ashleywood and to see this amazing 7-acre campus where Women's Aid is already doing this. You're already working together in community. You're already offering survivors a place to belong long after the crisis. And I believe that the foundation for a greater collaboration has already been laid. We're not bringing you anything that you don't already know how to do. You know how to build relationships. You know how to work together. All we're bringing you is some lessons learned from the journey that we have been on for 30 years to create greater collaboration for survivors. I also want to give great honor to the vision that you have here to create the first camping and mentoring program for children exposed to trauma. Camp Hope Northern Ireland will be the first in Europe to take our research on hope and resiliency and apply it in a measurable way with children exposed to trauma. And yesterday when we toured Ashleywood and saw the property, and Mari showed us where you actually are going to do some staging for camp, where children can practice a campfire, where children can have perhaps a little ropes course or a zip line and learn about what it would look like to actually go off to the Roscoe Youth Village. And last night I had the opportunity to talk to Paul, the regional coordinator from Roscoe Youth Village, and talk about this vision that we have. Children in life, to break this cycle, need a pathway forward. They need to be able to look forward to something. And looking forward to a parent going to jail or looking forward to living in a shelter is not hope. Children have to be able to be excited about their future. And so this idea of being able to go to a camp in the summer and then be involved in activities all year long where they can learn new pathways forward in life is certainly one that we want to see happen here. I'd like to tell a couple of stories, and then I will turn it over to Gail. In 2002, we opened the San Diego Family Justice Center, and Gail will talk about that today. It was the first 25-agency collaborative anywhere in the world, where 25 agencies came together under one roof: police officers and prosecutors and advocates and doctors and nurses and social workers and therapists and chaplains and job training professionals, people coming together under one place. And as we created that, one of our dreams became to create a camp for children, and it was called Camp Hope San Diego. Today that has become Camp Hope America, and tomorrow that will become Camp Hope Northern Ireland. But during the early years of our camp, we had a lot of volunteers. I was one of those volunteers. I went to camp one week, And I met a boy at camp who I saw the first day, and he ran very hot. I could tell that he had a terrible temper. And I was concerned. He was almost 12 years old, and he was big enough to hurt other children, and big enough perhaps even to hurt the staff. So I stayed close to him for the first 2 days of camp. And on the second day of camp, we were in line for lunch. And I heard a voice behind me say, "I want to play goalie." And I thought, okay, I'll turn around. And it was the boy that I had been watching for those 2 days. His name tag said Calvin. And I said, "Calvin, would you like to play goalie?" Thinking, where's the soccer field? And he said, "I want to play goalie now. And my name's not Calvin. My name is Alex." I said, "Okay, Alex, you can play goalie." And as I turned, the soccer field was right there. And children waiting in line for lunch were kicking the soccer ball. So I took Alex with me over to the soccer field, and I said, "Alex, do you know how to play goalie?" "Yes." "You can use your hands." "I know." "Okay, you can stand in the goal, and you block the ball." And I had 2 boys play defense, and I had a boy and a girl play offense. "They'll kick the ball, and you can use your hands to block the ball." "I know." And so he moved into the goal box, and he stood like this. He never moved in the goal box. He never blocked a ball. He never used his hands. He never moved. They kicked the ball right by him over and over again. And he wouldn't even go get the ball out of the net. He just stood and stared at the ball going by. And finally, one of the boys playing defense turned to Alex and said, "You suck at goalie." And that was a true statement. He was a terrible goalie. And as soon as that boy said, "You suck at goalie," Alex triggered and attacked the 9-year-old boy and swung at him. "I will effing kill you." And as he swung at the boy, I caught him around the waist. And as soon as I caught him around the waist, where do you suppose his anger focused? On me. His anger suddenly focused on me. "I will effing kill you. You're a dead man. You let go of me, you're a dead man." And I could not let go of him as he was swinging, trying to hurt me. And so I ended up holding him. And I held him for almost 40 minutes while I said, "Alex, it's okay. I know you're upset. I know you're angry. Alex, I know he hurt your feelings. I know, Alex. Breathe with me. It's okay, Alex." I did not shame him. I did not blame him. I did not criminalize him. I just cheered for him. "Breathe with me, Alex. Feel my breathing. Breathe with me." And after 40 minutes, he began to regulate. All the other children had gone to lunch. Everybody had left. We had 3 adults with me, called the rule of 3s. No adult is ever alone with a child at our camp. So we had 3 adults. And after about 40 minutes, he began to calm down. And then I said to him, "Alex, in just a minute, you have a choice. I'm going to let go of you. And you can attack me, and you will be arrested today. You will have to go to jail. Or you can go find that 9-year-old boy and attack him, and you will go to jail. Or today we're going to go canoeing on the lake, and I will teach you how to paddle a canoe and how to ride in a canoe, and you can learn how to canoe with me. Those are your choices. Attack me, go to jail. Attack that other boy, go to jail. Or go canoeing. Your choice." And he said, "Let me think about it for a while." And so for 10 more minutes, there was silence. And I started to let go of him. And he said, "Don't let go of me yet." And so now I was just hugging him. And 10 minutes later, he said very matter-of-factly, "I'd like to go canoeing. I think canoeing would be fun. I've never been canoeing. How do you paddle a canoe? How do you balance a canoe? I want to go in a canoe with you." And that day, he went in a canoe. And then he came back to camp the next year, and the next year. And 2 years later, I took this picture of Alex whitewater rafting on the Klamath River. And that's what hope looks like on the face of a rage-filled boy who had grown up in a home with child abuse and domestic violence, who had inside him this internalized anger that he didn't know what to do with, until we started to say, you can let that go, and you can set goals in your life, and you can begin to be different than your father. And then 3 years after that, we took this picture of Alex, because Alex, now Calvin, he went back to his name, because trauma children sometimes want to change their name because they think if they change their name, they'll be a different child. But instead, Alex learned that he could be Calvin, and he could overcome that, and so we started calling him Calvin again at his request. And at the age of 17, he became a counselor for the small children, the young children at our camp. And then a year after that, he counseled again, and I took that picture, and he's now 18 years old. And he's starting to learn what it means to be a man who respects and honors women and girls and other people. And then just months after he graduated from high school, we gave Alex a scholarship, $1,500, to go to university, to go to college. He didn't go to jail. He didn't go to prison. He's never raped a woman. He's not going to beat a woman. He went to college where he belongs, and he's now in college, and he wants to be a psychologist to help other boys like him. That's the goal of why we're sitting in this room. It's not just to help adult victims. It's to break the cycle of violence with the children, because the children is where you change the world, not the adults. The children are the ones that need to understand that their lives can be different. We're also here because of a man named Dr. Chan Hellman, who is sitting right there in the front row. Dr. Hellman is the leading hope researcher in the world right now. He is doing more research on hope and the power of hope in a human being's life than anyone else. And just 7 years ago, I met Chan Hellman, and I learned about his research on hope, and he said, you need to measure hope in all of your programs. And I said, you can't measure hope. And he said, I'm a quantitative psychologist. I can measure anything. And he said, this is all about hope. And as I stand here today, it's all about hope. Human beings are born with hope. Every one of us in this room, babies are born with hope. It's the essence of being human. The ability as we grow up as human beings to imagine a different future, to set goals and to think pathways in our life and to decide who we want to be and where we want to go and what we want to do, that's the very nature of hope. We're born with it. We're the only creatures on earth that are hope-centered. All other creatures are creatures of instinct. They don't actually imagine a future. They can't imagine a future. They only live in the moment, and they act in instinct. But human beings have the ability to look forward into the future. And the problem that we battle in everything we do, the problem that Calvin was battling that day on that soccer field, is that we get robbed of hope. Direct trauma, vicarious trauma, we all get robbed of hope in our lives. Sometimes it's related to violence and abuse. Sometimes it's related to natural disasters. Sometimes it's related to illness or adversity. We get robbed of hope in our lives. First responders, firefighters, police officers, doctors, nurses, teachers, people dealing directly with others often get robbed of hope. Social workers get robbed of hope, hearing the trauma of other people and experiencing the stories of other people. We all have a battle about hope in our lives. And the fundamental truth of life is that children are always robbed first. Children are always robbed first. And when you're growing up in a violent and abusive home and you want your family to be like this, but you can't make it that way, you can't change your father, you can't change your mother, you get robbed of hope. And children robbed of hope end up populating the mental health systems of the world. Children robbed of hope end up populating jails and prisons. Children robbed of hope go on with their rage to hurt other people. That's why we're all sitting in this room. So the battle becomes creating hope again in the lives of everyone. And that's what it's all about. Mother Teresa was asked before she died, what is the calling of humanity? And she said, we must give hope, always hope. The problem is that you cannot give what you do not have. So if you don't have hope in your life, you have no hope to give to other people. So all of life becomes restoring our own hope, learning how to give hope, replenishing our own hope, giving hope. That becomes the calling. And when Abraham Maslow created Maslow's hierarchy in 1955 and said, these are the complex needs of human beings, when he did this, he put at the top of his chart not hope, but he put self-actualization. But when you understand what self-actualization is the ability to contextualize the past and then set goals for the future and imagine that future and then see it become a reality. And hope is the belief that your future can be better than your past and that you play a role in making it so by the choices you make and the goals you pursue and the pathways you find to achieve those goals. That's what hope is. It's the same thing as self-actualization. That's our calling right there. The reason we're all sitting in this room today is because family justice centers have the goal of meeting those needs. No one agency can do all that for a survivor. No one individual can provide safety and security and support and all of those things. It takes all of us, what Gail Strack calls the power of we. And the power of we becomes that calling. And when we understand that trauma robs us of hope and that the goal of life becomes to restore hope, we understand why we're all sitting in this room. Because together, we are more powerful than we are individually. Yet we live in systems where everybody works separately. Prosecutors are over here, the judges are over here, police are over here, social workers are over here, the shelter's over here, the church is over here, mental health professionals are over here, children get their services here, adults get their services here, and you realize that in that gauntlet that we create for trauma survivors to get help, they can't navigate all of our systems. They can't go all the places they need to go or do all the things they need to do. And so it becomes easier for a trauma survivor to go back to the abusive situation than to navigate our systems. When Gail and I became prosecutors 30 years ago, we thought the answer was prosecution. We would solve everything with prosecution. We would just arrest and prosecute people who hurt others. And slowly, as the years went by, we realized that prosecution was not going to solve the problem. We were never going to arrest or prosecute our way out of violence and abuse. We had to focus on the needs of the adult survivors, and we had to focus on the needs of the children. And that's what began the San Diego Family Justice Center, was our realization that it would take all of us. And as we begin to focus on how to create the power of we in all of this, we learned that there was another pyramid. And that pyramid is called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Pyramid. And the ACE study, which began in San Diego, California, where we were working in the 1990s by Dr. Vincent Felitti, became the pyramid that we were going to battle with. If you want to have Maslow's hierarchy, you've got to be willing to deal with this, because this pyramid is based on the research about what happens in childhood before the age of 18 that produces impacts on brain development, that produces impacts on social and emotional intelligence, that produces unhealthy coping mechanisms or at-risk behaviors that ultimately in the long run plays itself out as disease and disability and victimization and perpetration. And at the top of the ACEs pyramid is not hope. At the top of the ACEs pyramid is death. ACEs produces a score from 0 to 10 based on your level of childhood trauma. And the higher that score goes, the shorter your lifespan becomes. So when you become a 6 on the ACE scale, on average, you die 20 years younger than somebody who is a 0 on the ACE scale. Longitudinal research now done all over the United States, being done here. Deirdre and I were speaking about it last night. ACE's work being done here in Northern Ireland. This is research that's now been replicated in Canada and across the world. Childhood trauma, unmitigated childhood trauma, trauma without intervention, trauma without hope, trauma without healing produces that. And that's what produces the next generation of perpetrators. Alex Calvin had been robbed of hope, and his brain probably did not look the same as the brain of a child without trauma when I met him at the age of 11. Today, I would argue that his brain probably does look normal. He's had healing and therapy and counseling, and he's gone to camp, and he's had mentoring, and he's got exciting things going on in his life. He has hope. He has things to look forward to, and he's setting goals and achieving those goals, and the synapses and the neurons and the neural pathways are evolving in his brain. And now he's becoming a young man that will not become a serial rapist. He will not become a serial strangler. He will not become that man that abuses women, because he knows that he can be different than that, and he's got role models to be different than that. So as I have Gail come and speak in just a moment about the Family Justice Center journey, I just want to challenge you and thank you for being hope givers. You are hope givers right now. What you do for the lives of people in need is give them hope. In the middle of trauma and pain, you remind them that there can be a different pathway. In the middle of our loss, you remind them there can be a different way. I score a 5 on the ACE scale. I score a 5. I grew up in a home impacted by violence and abuse. And I didn't understand growing up that I was even in an abusive home. Because when you grow up in an abusive home, you think it's normal. I thought every father did to his children what my father did to me. I thought my grandfather, who abused my grandmother and all of his children, I thought all fathers and all husbands did that, until I became a prosecutor and I started sending people to jail and prison for the things that my grandfather and my father had done in their families. And then I realized it's not normal. You can make different choices. And that is the pathway forward. I never hit my wife. I never hit my children, never even spanked my children. I'm now a grandfather. In a matter of hours, Lord willing, we hope to have our 4th grandchild. My daughter is pregnant. My daughter was due last Friday. She's in Spokane, Washington. And while Gail is talking, I will be looking at my phone. All of you, listen to Gail. Don't look at your phones, but I get to look at my phone while Gail is talking, because we're about to have our 4th grandchild. And the cycle has broken. My children are all a 0 on the ACE scale. And that becomes the goal. The next generation of our children should be a 0 on the ACE scale. And then the next generation should be a 0 on the ACE scale. But it's not just enough to say no violence and no abuse. It also has to be their hope scores go up. They're excited about the future. They have a vision for the future. So during this conference, as you have the opportunity to hear Dr. Chan Hellman, as you have the opportunity to hear me talk about our Camp Hope program and Gail talk about the work around strangulation, think about it in the context of hope. It's all about hope. When a woman is strangled, as Judge McElhone just talked about, when a woman is strangled, a man is on top of her with his hands on her neck, she's losing hope. She can't set a goal. She doesn't have a pathway. He controls whether she lives or dies. He wants her to know that he decides, that he's God and she is not God, and he decides whether she lives or dies. He is robbing her of hope. The ultimate robbery of hope is strangulation. She has no control over her life at all, no control over her body at all. So you see, whether it's strangulation or child abuse or concussive impacts from blows to the head, we're in this journey together. And let's not, as we go forward through these days, think that it's about us and them, that we're up here and that survivors are down here. Because if we create systems where the professionals are here and survivors are here, we're doing the exact same thing to victims that perpetrators are doing to victims. We're putting ourselves above, and we're power here and they are not power. This has to be our goal. Our goal is equality. Our goal is we treat them as equals. It doesn't matter what their education is. It doesn't matter what their professional title is, or if they have no professional title at all. We treat them as equals. The vision of the Family Justice Center movement is we create a we create a culture of hope that can battle that, and then we see the healing. And I will tell you, when my daughter delivers, it will be a very special moment for me, because 3 years ago, my daughter was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer called gray zone lymphoma. Only 300 cases in all of medicine ever diagnosed. And we were told 3 years ago she may not live. And if she does live, after 6 months of chemotherapy, she will not be able to have children of her own. So, and it's too late to harvest eggs, so we're so sorry, you'll probably never be able to have children, Carrie Ann. That was 3 years ago. And we were robbed of hope. We battled for hope in our family. And 3 years later, she's in full remission. She's alive. And she's 9 months pregnant, plus a couple of days. And hope has been restored to our family because we stuck together and a lot of people supported us. So whether it's trauma, whether it's illness, whether it's disease, we're all in the hope business. And the Family Justice Center journey is about restoring hope. And it's not just hope for survivors. As you listen to Gail today talk about the original Family Justice Center in San Diego, California, realize that the people that worked there found hope rise in their life too. Working there gave them hope and restored hope to them. So high hope people were able to help people who had been robbed of hope to bring up their hope. And together, that model changed our community. And it can change communities around the world.